And hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the SHEDcast. This the 29th of April, and I think it's the 7th. It's our 7th SHEDcast. And lurking in the background, I have got Kate Gordon. Hello, Kate.
Hello.
Welcome to the SHEDcast. We've been talking about SHEDcasty stuff for the last month, I suppose, but this is your first visit.
It is, yeah, first ever visit. I'm excited to be here, actually. It was nice to meet you through the Shed Happens show.
That was great fun.
Yeah, great fun, yeah.
Indeed, and just while we're on the subject, Shed Happens is a radio show that is being organised by guys in Frome and actually all around it. And it went live this morning. So Wednesdays is a big Shed day now in the virtual world, because you've got 10 till 2 on Frome FM and broadcasting live. Shed Happens show. That's a really good radio show. I caught the second half of it today. And then in the afternoon, of course, you got this. And then also lurking in the background, we've got Michael. Hello, Michael.
Hi, guys.
Hey,
hello.
Hey. It's the other way. It's really weird with the camera because it
is, isn't it?
I'll move that way and it's backwards.
I'm totally unfamiliar with this.
I know, and I keep getting it wrong, and I've been doing this for a few weeks. So, Michael, Kate, Michael. Michael is in the south of Guernsey, near the shed, just spitting along the road around the corner from our shed. And Kate, whereabouts are you?
I'm based in Manchester.
Ah, fantastic. I've spent a bit of time up in Manchester over the last 5 years. About 4 years ago, I'd spent about 3 years in and out of Manchester doing a project. So I got to know the place reasonably well. Spent quite a lot of time at the Museum of Science and Industry, MOSI.
Ah, yeah, it's a good city. It's good fun.
It's very cool. It's funny, until I started doing some work into Manchester, Manchester was not a place that would ever have been on my, I must go visit list, you know. But actually, I found lots of really interesting things, and more importantly, more interesting people. So yeah, really
very friendly up here.
Cool things going on. Very, very, very cool. So what's happening today? Let's have a quick look at my running order. Yes, we are organised. So I've already forgotten this, but I was going to start today's show by saying bienvenue. Michael will know what I mean. Bienvenue.
Something like that, yeah. Wheelbarrow.
Chicken.
So it's a word association game all of a sudden. I like it. So bienvenue is the Guernsey way of saying hello and welcome. Bienvenue, welcome.
Oh.
And I'm going to try and remember. I've got to tie my fingers together with a cable tie to remember to say goodbye at the end in the Guernsey way. So stick around if you can till the end. And you'll see the Guernsey way of saying goodbye. It's clean. It's nothing rude. Let's look at our running order. Let's stick something up on screen. Let's have a look at the side here. Here's hoping that I've got this lined up properly. Yay! So Kate is the National Shed Development Manager for the UK Men's Shed Association. So it's like it's getting the big guns in. It's pretty. Sounds impressive. And then when we've had enough of Kate, we'll put the kettle on and have tea time, PKO. Because of course, once, as you all shedders know, once you get a bloke to blokes sitting around gassing, it's only so long before someone says, "I need a wee," or "Put the kettle on." So we'll do that half the way along. And then Michael is coming under the title of Meet the Plasterer. Michael is our resident go-to guy in the Guernsey shed for all things plastery and concretey.
I need you in my life. There's a shortage of plaster in Manchester because of everything that's going on. I don't know if that's the same where you are. We are struggling to find even one bag.
Okay.
Yeah, Michael's your man. We'll come to some arrangement. We'll pimp him out for a fee. In his spare time, that would have to be.
So on the radio.
We're going to have a pile of fun. He's on the dog and
Yeah.
bone. I'll mute his mic while he's gassing. It's classic. Love it. So in the background, we're getting some comments in from Mark Smith, who is our Guernsey Shed chairman. Mark Smith, how do? That's obviously targeted at Kate, how do? Or it should be, you're right there, kid. Something like that. I've lost it a bit.
How do you too?
And Dan Gamay says, greetings. Indeed. And says, Shed Happens. That's the Men's Shed radio show. Happens every Wednesday for us and every day for Kate.
And it's repeated on Saturdays from 12 till 2 as well.
Okay.
You can listen anytime. You can listen anytime because it is on you can listen to Freem FM. Or Shed Happens has got its own website as well.
Yeah, that's good. I must admit, a few weeks ago I was looking and I couldn't see how best to find it, but I think you've got that organised in one repository, which really helps. So yes, do punters go and check that out. Just do a Google for it. Shed Happens Froome, spelt Frome, and go check that out. Dan is involved with that, and it is rather good, really interesting. And then we've also got a message coming in from Facebook user. And a quick word about that. As you can see trickling along the bottom of the screen there, we've got a Facebook user notice. If you're on Facebook, could you do us a lemon flavour? Oh, JP's just trashing the joint while he's here. He's doing some soldering, and yes, that was the soldering iron going on the wooden floor. If you're a Facebook user, just above where this video post is, or depending on how Facebook arranges it, might be below, there is a link that says www.streamyard.com/Facebook. Could you do us a favor and click on that link and then allow StreamYard, which is the system we're using here, allow it to use your Facebook profile. And then we get down here, your picture and your name. So just like Mark came in before, we get his mug shot, ugly mug, and his name. And it's just nice. Otherwise, it's all vague and anonymous. So if you are vague, anonymous Facebook user, I almost said use book face there, but that's not quite right. Then do us a favor, go click on that and then chip in, and then we can see who you are, and that just it's a bit more friendly, isn't it? So I don't think there's anything else to sort of do in terms of preamble and introduction. So what we'll do is, Michael, if you don't mind, I'm going to boot you out for a little bit, and we'll have a chat with Kate, and find out. Who's this saying hi, Dad? Well, I'm thinking it's not JP because he's not got Facebook, and I'm guessing that's not addressed to Kate.
Well, I'm a woman of many secrets.
On the weekends, she's known as Jeff.
Yeah,
okay. Is that how you got the Men's Shed job?
Yeah.
So,
it's
Michael,
looking up.
You've got one of your daughters, I think, must be looking in.
Yeah, that's Danu, yeah.
And someone is saying pro-privacy. Well, I get it, but nah to you because of that. There we go. We'll take that off. Right. I'm going to bump Michael out just for now, and let's have a chat with Kate. Kate, it's really lovely to see you. I can say once again, welcome to sunny Guernsey. But I can only say that now that we've got into the afternoon here, because this morning was bleh. And it's been raining for the last sort of 24 hours. And although it's been sunny and what have you for the last 6-7 weeks over here, it's been lovely. 24 hours of bleh, and I'm fed up of it already. So welcome to sunny Guernsey.
Well, Manchester, when you choose to live in Manchester, it comes with the territory. So,
doesn't it? So my first question to you is, what is the UK Men's Shed Association? I know we've got viewers all up and down the country and a few dotted around the world, but what is this UK Men's Shed Association? Because as far as I understand it, all of these sheds run independently. They're locally run. So what's all that about?
Yeah. So it might be helpful to explain kind of, I guess, the journey of where the association came from. And it's very similar to the other associations. So the Australian Men's Shed Association, or AMSA, which is known as, and has been well established. I think they've been going for 10, 12 years now. And the Irish Men's Shed Association. There are associations for in New Zealand. and also in America, they've now started to pull together an organisation. And really, the role of the association, it's a membership organisation. So we're here to promote, support and represent the shed movement of the UK. But you're right, all sheds are independent of us as an organisation. We're here to support and serve the shed community rather than give instruction or tell sheds how they should be doing things. That's very much...
You don't carry a rule book that's this thick.
No, and to be honest, it would be to the detriment of the shed movement if we did. That's the beauty of the shed movement.
This is somewhat of an aside, but I'm going to stick it out there anyway, just because it's quite amusing to me. I grew up in the Methodist Church, and of course, you know, Jesus gave us the 10 Commandments, but somehow along the line, the Methodist Church, is it based in Liverpool? I think they got their headquarters, or Manchester. I can't remember.
It's up north. Yeah.
It's up your way. But the Methodist headquarters in the UK held the Methodist rule book, which had at the time, many years ago, had like 1,500 rules in it. And it always made us, as I was a youth group growing up, it always made us chuckle that, you know, the 10 Commandments did. That should cover it. But we somehow managed to make another 1,490 rules just to cover everything.
Yeah, and I think that's the right. I mean, ultimately, insofar as, you know, we're here to provide, I guess, insight and information, and almost often, I feel sometimes like I'm a switchboard, like I'm linking sheds up with other sheds, because actually all shed journeys are very different, but there's almost a lot of similarities in the challenges that each shed faces. And actually, sometimes there's a wealth of information you can provide online, whether that's through videos or written content, but quite a lot of the time it's about realizing that Jeff in Dalbeattie, who I think has been on the show, has a very similar shed model to somebody way down south in Hampshire, and actually linking those two people together can provide a whole wealth of insight. So that's a big part of us, is just trying to provide support and advice and guidance, especially to new sheds. I think a lot of sheds may say that, okay, well, we've got ourselves up and running, and, you know, we don't necessarily use the association anymore. But actually, by supporting the association, we have, you know, hundreds of inquiries from new people that want to start up new sheds. The shed movement has grown from about 300 to 650 in the last 3 or 4 years. So I mean, I think we worked out it's about 66% growth, which is amazing. Yeah, especially the challenges that the UK has, which is mostly premises. That is still the big thing. Yeah.
I know that we've certainly benefited as the Guernsey Shed from being a member of the association, and then getting access to the members part of the UK Men's Shed Association site, which actually I can stick up here, men'ssheds.org.
You're very good at this, aren't you?
But great to get into some of the documentation that you've got and some of the policies and such that you've got as a generic document. So be it child protection or health and safety policies and stuff like that, where we can risk assessments, download it.
What kind of legal structure, because that's a minefield as well. You know, what do you choose to go to register as? It's there's When I first joined the association, and I'll talk about the ambassador program in a bit, but I went around and visited all the guys that were on the ambassador program at that point, and I started making a list of all the different areas of effectively running a shed. It's a complex thing. I mean, it's basically a mini social enterprise. So you've got all the stuff that goes with the logistical management of the shed, but then you've got all the relationship stuff that, you know, how do you create a healthy culture in a shed? How do you manage a relationship with the community? It's a big thing to do, you know.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the more collaboration and cross-pollination there is between sheds, the better. And like I say, being able to take template documents, read it, understand it, customize it for your own locality, and then rest on that, it cuts through an awful lot of headache. Because, of course, like you say, for setting up yourself as a charity, registering as a non-profit or a charity, or all the health and safety documents, all those sort of stuff. You've got to become an expert in all of that, and insurance and stuff like that.
It's huge. You're basically dabbling in all these areas of expertise, you know, lease agreements, if you're going to build a shed, planning a permission, it's huge. And I think we pulled together a group. They've been going for about 4 months now to review all the resources that we have on the library and looking at whether or not they need updating, but also gaps. And on top of that, almost bringing in case studies and examples. So where sheds are doing certain things that might be valuable insight, actually representing the shed voice on the website as well is something we're keen to do, because there's so much. In fact, when I first joined the association, you kind of hear everybody's things that they ran with, whether it's fundraising or finding insurance, and then you find the things that each shed found very difficult. And what's interesting is you put everybody in the room, you'd have everything covered. But that's the difficulty. All sheds are sometimes feeling like they're working in isolation. What challenges they have depends on what people they've got in the shed, or what experience they've already got available to them from their own team. So when I did Shed Fest, actually, we've done all these amazing keynote speakers and exhibition and workshops, and actually there's a point where I just stood back and just saw everybody just talking to each other. That's what they really wanted to do.
I've seen on the Facebook page for the UK Men's Shed Association that only started 6-8 weeks ago, something like that, maybe 2 months, something like that.
Say that again.
The UK Men's Shed Association website, the Facebook page, which only started probably a couple of months ago, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of the conversation on that has been people saying, what do you do about insurance? What do you do about this? And lots of that's been a great forum. Quite literally as operating as a forum, as well as the usual sort of Facebook memes of pictures of this, that, and the other.
Some more appropriate than others. What about shed banter, though, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, we enjoy that. But that's been a useful touch point, because it's open. As long as you've got a Facebook account, it's open to everybody to dive in and chip in. Interesting one that came up yesterday. Did you see the question was, what's your, I'm trying to get the wording approximately right, what's your most valuable asset?
Yeah.
And I was one of the first couple. But I'm guessing the guy who posted, I've forgotten his name, but forgive me, fella, was asking, is it your lathe? Is it your laser cutter? Is it the kettle? But actually, to a man, all the first responders certainly were, it's the members.
Yeah.
It's the guys. Because it really is. And I can speak, as we will be talking to Michael in a bit, we haven't had a shed, much of a shed, because we spent 3 years renovating and we're still in quite a mess. So why would you go there? And why would you be doing plumbing when it's 2 degrees? And I can say it's 2 degrees inside as well as out, because the massive shed door is not on the building. Why would you do that? And that's purely because of the relationships.
Absolutely.
And the vision of what's coming.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're doing it with these guys, we didn't have the machines, we didn't have anything.
Is it about the shed? Is it about the tools, or is it about the people, the men that are supporting each other? And it is, it's number 3. And that's been an interesting thing for us in terms of, it's almost a philosophical question of what is a shed? Because like any other organization, a charity, we would say, well, this is definitely a shed, and this is what it is, and these are the rules about what it is and what it isn't. And that's quite difficult, because a lot of sheds, they have so many similarities, but they're also very, very different, and because it's about the people and the connections that people have. So it's a very interesting journey to be part of, I guess. I've jumped in from the side and
sure.
Yeah.
I suppose that question is, what's the minimum viable product, MVP? What is the bare minimum of a shed? And I'm just thinking through, actually the minimum viable product doesn't include having a shed. Because actually you could meet in the local cafe as a bunch of guys and have a cup of tea once a week, and then go off back into your own garages or wherever you hang out and make some things, then bring them along next week and have a talk Rollocks and whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah. And even with COVID-19, there's more and more talk about, how do we make shed concept or shed available to those who can never leave the house, perhaps. So, virtual sheds and things like that. So it gets even more sort of diverse in the approach to a shed. But ultimately, it's about the connections and I guess the interest to learn, the interest sort of explore stuff you might never have done before, and sharing skills and expertise, I guess. Yeah.
And that's the vehicle for it. You mentioned the words social enterprise. They're fairly new words to me. In a couple of years, I've heard about social enterprises. And there's a lot of work being done on that in Guernsey. There's some experts in that sort of field over here. Great people to learn from. But yeah, it doesn't matter what you're doing. I used to be involved in a kids music program, and actually it was a social enterprise, and the vehicle was music. And this is targeting particularly men for us in Guernsey. It's primarily men. No, exclusively men. That's the word I'm looking for. Exclusively men in Guernsey, of pretty much all ages, but mostly senior citizens. And it's about getting people together. It's just a vehicle. When you've got a lathe, that gathers guys, and you talk about stuff. When you've got a kettle, when you've got a this, that, and the other.
Yeah, absolutely. It is wonderful. I've never enjoyed work actually so much. It is absolutely fascinating. The characters that you get to meet through the program that I run, which is the main focus at the moment, which has been the ambassador program. But of course, when you're making contact with sheds, I mean, I've been to visit. I think I've visited about 60 or 70 sheds now in the last I think I've been around 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and the diversity, but it's every time you knock on the door, it's almost like a treasure trove who's in there, and the characters that you get to meet. It's wonderful.
Fascinating. So what does a normal week look like for you? And is this part-time job, or is this full-time?
Yeah, no, this is full-time. So I joined in July 2018, and I'd come from a community project that I was trying to establish, and I'm trying to establish on a piece of land that my nan had left to me in her will, and it was primarily focused at young people. It was along Coventry Canal in Warwickshire. And when I was looking at the sort of business model and thinking, well, how are we going to generate income? And actually it felt like the site could also serve other demographics, other ages. And someone just kept saying, speak to men's sheds, speak to men's sheds. And I'm very keen on intergenerational work as well, sort of people passing skills down to younger generations that are hooked into digital technology and aren't necessarily learning things with their hands.
Yeah.
So I'd been speaking to the Men's Shed Association, and then this job came up, which, to be fair, National Shed Development Manager. I mean, it's a pretty cool title. When I first got the job, my boyfriend said, "You're doing what now?" So yeah, I joined in 2018, and it's full time. So there's 3.5 members of staff that work for the association. So yeah, it's a small organisation. One's part time.
You're a midget. Oh, right. Okay, right.
One's part time. Yeah. It's not anything. Yeah. Yeah. So we're still a small organisation.
That's good. And I'll just chuck in a note. Mark, our chair, said Marcel taught me the journey to establishing a shed is as important as the shed itself. And I can't take credit for that, but because we're all in it together. But what we found, as I say, we were renovating for 3 years, and we sort of still are. We're open, but we've got toilets in the kitchen, a minimal workshop space. Still a lot to do. But for 3 years, we've been just bare bones. That we had no roof, and we had no toilet. We even had a scout camp toilet tent in the shed, and a bucket, because that was the only option. Memories, but I'll show you that later. But yeah, there's been an awful lot of frustration for us as individuals, going, "Come on, we've got to get this done. And I've been there too, thinking this is just too slow. This is. But actually, then you come around, you go to sleep, and you wake up again tomorrow morning. You go, "This is it.
Yeah.
This is it. We're doing it. This is shedding."
Yeah.
Of course, we've got a vision of where we want to be.
Yeah.
But this is us. We're doing it.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. It's a lovely line that was it Mark just used there. I think I will certainly adopt that into my narrative when I speak to sheds, because I think you're absolutely right. We almost live in a world that the destination is always where we're supposed to be getting to. But when does a shed start? Well, it starts with a cup of tea or a pint in a pub potentially, depending on the conversation around the journey, and then going through that pain of all the challenges is absolutely that's the shed journey, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's never to say that we settle for living in a pigsty. We still have that dream, but and then there's a metaphor for life, isn't it? Because often life, as you say, lots of things like this, life is like that. Oh, I'll be happy when I get when I get that, when I do that, when I get there, when I'm married, when I'm doing this, when I get that job, and you fail to enjoy the journey. Oh, we're getting deep and philosophical.
No, yeah, we are. There was something, I don't know what the quote is, but it's something about don't forget to stop and smell the flowers or something like that. I can't remember. Something about that, it's really important. And building those relationships with banter. I mean, that is the heart of what the sheds are about,
Fully, totally, yeah. Absolutely. So I was going to ask you what's next. You've mentioned I'll come to what's next in a second, but you mentioned you've travelled around 60 odd sheds ish, and you mentioned you met some characters. Any particular things that you can say live to the world without dobbing anybody?
That's really hard to pinpoint a particular individual. I think the one that still stands out for me, and I mentioned this on the Through My Phone, was that I'd gone to visit a shed in Yorkshire, based in Cliff Castle, and lovely guy called Alan Clark, who was kind of, I guess, leading that shed and he said, I know when the shed's functioning well because I'm actually able to sit back and read my book and the shed's just happening around me, so he felt real lovely that actually there's no sense of I own the shed, this is my shed. It's a case of the shed has blossomed and it's now functioning collectively, and that's lovely. But just before I was leaving, there was a polytunnel and I could hear some rummaging around. And so I popped my head in and I said, hello, who are you? And this guy popped through and went, hello, I'm the local Fig of the Dump. And it was just lovely because he was making the most out of an old fridge that he was, and then he talked me through this enormous horse. Not a horse, it's like a amateur dramatics horse that he'd been repairing, and there was just all these different things that he was juggling. It was just really lovely, that spirit of fixing, repairing, making do with everything.
Lovely.
Yeah, that's a particular person that very recently stuck out. It's difficult at the moment because I can't go and see anybody.
It's true.
Yeah,
that's as you know what prompted us to be doing this SHEDcast, and also we're doing a weekly hangout using Google Hangouts at the moment for that. And we've had up to half a dozen of our guys locally just dropping in and out of a couple of hours on a Saturday. Just, bit of chit chat, bit of banter. Tell us what you've been up to this week, whether you're feeling up or whether you're feeling down, or just, you could do it on the phone, but it's kind of nice in a group because you share. And I've always loved coming off those conversations. Just because you've touched base with someone, and it's really, really precious.
I feel quite I think it's quite fortunate that this has happened at a time where we do have access to a level of technology that allows people to still connect, and there's some pretty innovative things going on. I mean, there was a shed that is each week they've been encouraging members to come along and talk about a particular passion or interest, or even something that they don't know, they've wanted to know more about themselves. Like, I think there was a meteor shower with the satellites. So basically they decided to all go away for a week, research meteors, and then come back together and share what they'd learned. So it's some quite clever, quite innovative stuff going on. People branching out into and almost building that connection outside of the shed as well, which I hope will carry on. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. We haven't come to any conclusion as to whether the SHEDcast will continue beyond lockdown period, but if it is able to foster this kind of sharing, particularly as an island, it's really exciting to have input from you and other guys up and down the UK. We're no longer just a few guys puddling about in a shed in Guernsey. we're part of something much bigger.
Yeah. And that's I guess that's what I hope for the association to feel like, that actually you're part of something much bigger, because the voice of the shed movement is national, and it's a connection not just as your little shed, but you are part of a movement of bringing positive change in local community. I mean, it's extremely powerful.
And grassroots.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's change in the community, not because somebody told you to.
That's right. It's restoring a bit of soul, isn't it, in society? And I will continue to keep feeding you, Ambassador, or other folk that I.
Thank you. Stig of the dumps.
Yeah. I never found out what his real name was, to be fair.
Call him Stig. Cool. the Stig, if you don't mind.
Yeah, he's one. I think I've got a photo of him. He's lovely, really lovely looking character.
So what's next for you? And the other question I was going to ask is trends, and I don't know if that sort of comes into the same thing. But what trends do you see across the UK sheds as you visit them?
So it's probably useful to talk about the Ambassador program. So, or just explain a little bit about my role. So my role is about supporting the development, I guess, of new programs and new initiatives for the association. We've got a guy called John who looks after all the inquiries that kind of come in, and that's sort of day to day, people wanting to find out about certain aspects of running a shed. My role is really about looking at how we develop, I guess, new areas of business, new opportunities to enhance our offering, but also work with the chief officer to help raise the profile with the comms guy. And the Ambassador program has been my primary focus for the last year or so, 18 months. That's what I've got funding for. That's what I'm funded for by an organisation called the Rain Foundation. And that's about developing a national network of shed experience volunteers. So people, perhaps like yourselves, because we haven't got an ambassador in Guernsey, Marcel. But we're looking for people who have set up a shed, so have gone through the learning curve and are willing to do what kind of, once they've got their shed to a certain point, are happy to then support more sheds. So they're almost like a local shed voice that can feed into us, but we feed to them as well. So if we've got new stuff coming out, it's representation across the country through the shed network rather than more staff. So that's been my primary focus, and I've grown it from about 12 to 40. And I'm trying to focus on the north now because things were, again, a little bit kind of southern focused. So I'm looking at West Midlands, the Midland, Manchester and the north, basically. So that's been an area of focus for me. We have got a number of committees coming together, and this ties in with your trends question. So the trends of the shed movement is sheds find it hard to find low-cost, sustainable, long-term premises.
Yeah.
Some sheds are looking to build new premises. Some sheds struggle with things like lease agreements, sort of planning permission, changing use, all that sort of stuff. So we've now got a group of volunteers again coming together to form a property committee. So they're going to hopefully be a resource of insight specifically about having shed buildings and how they can support sheds. And technical. Health and safety is a big area. Sheds feeling like they're safe and legal in the way that they're operating. So we've got another committee coming together to look at all of that and how we support sheds. And health and well-being as well. I don't know about you, but a lot of sheds have started to find that they've got a lot of social prescriptions and referrals coming down to them from GPs.
Yeah, that's something we're holding just ahead of us. We're starting to get referrals, but it's something we're going to get more seriously involved in. Yeah,
and there's quite a lot of government change. They've got lots of social prescription, there's a movement towards having more social prescriptions. So how that impacts on the shed movement, because there is an element of sheds care, but they're not necessarily carers, and how sheds can support that without being overwhelmed or it changing the dynamic of what the shed was originally created for.
Social prescription is a fairly recent buzzword phrase. Could you just explain for a second for those who don't know it, what does that mean, social prescription?
So I think the government has looked at the people, the kind of people that go to GPs and recognise that a lot of the health-related issues that are out there in society at the moment are to do with obviously mental health, which is from loneliness and isolation. So often, instead of referring somebody and going, here's a prescription for some drugs, the prescription is to go and refer them to a social enterprise or some sort of community activity that would perhaps support them in their recovery of feeling lonely and isolated and mental health. So it's prescription in a sort of new way. It's not, here's a piece of paper and take this. It's more, this is what we prescribe you, go to this group. But that then means that you've got a wave of people coming into sheds with an expectation of a service, and that's not necessarily what the shed is. So it's managing that really, and how we educate the health groups to not just see it as a bit of I say dumping ground, that sounds bad, but that's a phrase that the sheds have used before, is we're worried about the influx of people coming down to us. So health and well-being is another area, but I mean the other big thing that's relevant to sheds, I guess, is knowing that sheds have so many areas to juggle. We're looking at how we develop a shed leadership program. So this is online, training, whether that's online or remote training on different areas of running a shed. And that could be whether that's videos or actual online training sessions. That's kind of in the pipeline. However, I don't know if you've noticed, but all of the funders out there now, the ones that we had lined up to make these applications to get more money to invest, have all changed their criteria to being emergency response to COVID-19. Lottery in particular. So it means that things have been, I think, probably a bit postponed for a while until we know what the future looks like. Yeah. But ultimately, my role is growing ambassadors, the ambassador. We want 100 in England and probably up to 150 in total across the whole of the UK. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I'm going to just share in the screen, if I may, from the MenShed website, UK MenShed website, the Find a Shed page.
Yeah.
This is something that is right up your way. And so I'll just take a random zoom up around Scotland. Look at that. I'll just take a random zoom in here. All of those green and yellow, icons, let's call them icons. Each one of those is a shed. And there's something like, is it 480 open sheds in the UK now?
Yeah, so 400 and kind of, the number changes on a daily basis, but yeah, around that open, and then another 140 development.
That's very, very cool.
So the yellow ones are in development and the green ones are open.
Gotcha. Yes. Look, there's one in Guernsey.
There we go.
It's not geographically correct because we're out here, us down the bottom. Yeah.
I should say that, Marcel. So one of the things we're doing at the moment with lockdown is I'm looking to the ambassador network to contact all of the sheds to find out whether or not we hold the right information.
Yeah.
Because quite often we get 8,000 visits to our website every month. And one of the most visited pages is this one, because people's biggest question, where's my local shed?
Yeah.
And actually when sheds move or they change contact details or whatever, we might be signposting people to the wrong information. So we're now calling all the sheds during this lockdown to find out if we hold the right information so we can make sure we signpost people correctly. So if you do need to update your details, let me know and I can do it for you.
Awesome source. We'll check on that. So yes, you can see that this is a very useful website. It's the Find a Shed page. Let's just go back to the home page, just because. Yeah, sheds. That's all good stuff. 583 according to the website. That's great. Estimated almost 14,000 people engaged. That's awesome. So just for the benefit of everybody else, there's this Find a Shed bit at the top. Click on Find a Shed, and then you can type in your town name. Where should we try? Pick a town name.
Let's go Norfolk. Let's go Norfolk as a county. It's quite far away from you.
Norfolk and Norwich. Is that about right? Norfolk, UK. Let's have a look at that. And a 10-mile region. I'm work juggling between. Yeah, look, there's 1, 2 within the region.
There's actually more than that in.
Well, there's one development there. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. But different sheds have different problems. Like we've got more sheds in Norfolk than we have in London because premises is obviously.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad you've re-mentioned the premises. I'll just hide this out of the shot. I'm glad you re-mentioned the premises, because I was finger crossing and I've done something since, like picked up a mug of tea, and forgot to keep my fingers crossed. I was listening to the Shed Happens Men's Shed radio program earlier today. There was a guy on there talking about they're converting a double-decker bus to make a mobile shed.
Mike Brady.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Love it. Great. Mike, I don't know if you're listening, not our Mike Brady, yeah? I don't know if you're listening, but I wanted to reach out to you in some fashion, and this might be it, to say totally support what you're doing. And you were talking about other ways you could use this bus. You were talking about taking it to county fairs and stuff like that. Sounds fantastic. One of the things that we've been doing over here, in the period when we've been renovating the shed, we were aware that we didn't have much to offer, but there were also long-term people who couldn't make it to the shed. So there's a supported living centre over here. There's a number of them, but there's one 5-10 minutes drive away from us at the shed, called Le Grand Courtil, and Courtil Jacques alongside it. And that's a supported living place where people need some medical treatment during the week or nursing care during the week for more than a few hours. Then they can qualify to live there and they can become a tenant there. It's not a renty kind of thing. They purchase the flat, etc. So we've been going along there for 2 and a bit years now, and we gather up to 6 or 7 guys. Nominally these days 4 guys, sometimes 5. And we haven't got a shed, but we use a stairwell, and we putter about. We've made trays, and we've made what else have we made? A big planting. And on our piece de resistance, this last year, took us the whole year, was to make a traditional market barrow. And I'm hoping that we'll get to talk about that, if not on next week's show, possibly the week after. I'd really love to share what that's been doing. But I mention that because of busman Mike Brady and his cohort working on that, actually we've talked about having a shed in a van that we could take. As it is, I turn up in a little van with a wheelie box of tools, and I can wheel it in, and we use a stairwell. But having the bus would be extremely cool, that actually you could get people out. Or if they can't get out because of ambulant problems, if they're using walkers or wheelchairs, we have got a couple of guys in that situation, then at very least you've got the stock of tools on the bus where you can walk it in fairly easily. And that's been a really valuable thing for us to do, serving the community.
Yeah. Mobile sheds are something that I think are becoming more and more popular. Because it's a big thing to take on a whole shed building, as it is anyway, isn't it? So the idea of taking a shed experience to a community, especially for people that can't, on some levels, the people that can access sheds, they probably have cars, or they have people that they're connected with that can give them a lift. But there's a lot of people out that really need a shed that can't get it. So right. Great idea.
We're really excited about it, and I'd like to share it, but because of I think that's a model that could really easily be translated. So even the smallest of sheds, we were talking about sheds before that start with 3 guys around a cafe table. There's no reason why they couldn't do that at a residential home or something like that, in the cafe or whatever there, and engage with some guys who can't get out and about.
And Marcel, as and when that kind of emerges and evolves and stuff, please do let us know, because we love telling the shed story and showing different examples, whether that's through our newsletter, Shoulder to Shoulder, or through this property program, this kind of how do we talk about all the different types of shed buildings or not buildings, then that's we'd love to hear about that and talk about your story or your example. Yeah.
Well, we'd love to share it. As I say, it'll probably be on the SHEDcast here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But I'm glad you mentioned the Shoulder to Shoulder magazine, because if I can jab that up, if people go to menssheds.org.uk/newsletter-archive, they can download the whole archive of the magazines, and they are really nicely produced, really interesting articles. So if people particularly are sitting around, especially at this time, thinking, oh, what to do, there's a ton of stuff to read and feast on Shedwise. It's good. So heartily recommend that. But thanks for that. Is that organised by staff, or is there some volunteers producing that?
So last November, I think it was, we got a communications officer called Leo, who is also full-time. He's based in the Midlands. So we all work from home. We don't have an office. So he's the man in charge of the newsletter now, and all the Facebook stuff as well. So yeah.
Cool. It's really exciting. What I'd like to do now is if I can bring in our man Michael. He's waking up in the background. He's in the green room. We're using a system called StreamYard, and the bit that the punters can't see has got a few icons of things that might end up in the show, including the people. And StreamYard calls that the green room. So, Michael, if I can bump you back in. Ta-da! Hello.
Hello. Thank you for the nod.
Did you enjoy the drinks and snacks in the green room there?
I'm enjoying it very much. Look at the picture. Can you see the picture on the cup?
Yeah, what have you got on your cup? Hold it up a bit.
It's a toucan.
Ah, yes.
I'm known as toucan, Grand Toucan. Yeah.
You don't have them in Guernsey then?
I've been called toucan.
Yeah.
Toucans and I fall over.
Something like okay. We'll leave that one there.
I'm flying with Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Okay.
Kate, what are you drinking from today?
You know what? It's my favourite mug because it's round. It's like a hug, but it's not particularly special. It's just we argue over it actually.
Yeah.
We've got about 12, 15 mugs, but this is the one.
Very cool. I just noticed that the guy skulking around the back of you there, Kate, just walked off with a Hoover.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Lockdown's really kicked in, you see. His electricity dried up a bit, so he's now hoovering.
I know that Kate has got to run away shortly because she's got another meeting to get to. But Michael, I just wanted to drag you in before we take a tea and wee break. Oh yeah, we can see you now.
Okay.
I'd just ask from what you've heard from Kate and what she does, have you got any thoughts or questions about the whole national thing?
Lots, but too many stories, too many roads to go down. But firstly, Kate, thank you. I love it that there's a woman helping to put men's sheds together. Fantastic. I'm coming to meet you personally, all right? After the lockdown?
Yeah.
We'll do a plastering class or whatever up there, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. I've bought this house. We've got so many rooms to do. So yeah, any advice?
Okay. You're welcome, totally. I love it that there's so many inquiries, more and more inquiries, because for me, the main focus of Men's Shed is men's mental health, which of course goes across the board to the whole of the community, not just us men. And so many of us men are wonderfully disturbed when it comes to expressing ourselves. So the Men's Shed, men's mental health in the Men's Shed, the community thing is for me personally the focus. But I love that everyone has their own particular focus, and we can give that shine lights on it, if you like, and open it up and show people that they are of value. Each person, each man, whoever comes to the shed, has an amazing, unique value, and that's something we haven't cultivated in our so-called civilized society, the way I see it anyway. So I love it that you're there. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed listening to you very much.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you, Mike. And I really, I absolutely would love for us to meet up afterwards. You know, the more insight we can get from different sheds from around the country, it adds so much in terms of us feeling like we can connect people up and make them, understand that this is, without a shadow of a doubt, the most unusual movement I've ever come across. It's absolutely incredible. And like you say, you know, the men recognize him. We, for whatever reason, I don't know whether it's nature or nurture. I'm pretty sure it's mostly nurture, but men are not encouraged to talk about how things are going for them. And Patrick uses that lovely example where if you put 10 men in a room and ask them to talk about how they're doing emotionally, 5 of them will leave and the rest will look very awkward. But if you put a broken lawnmower in the room, the likelihood is they'll try and fix it, and in the process they'll get to know each other. Lawnmower might not get fixed, but the point is they've all got to know each other in the process. I think it's absolutely amazing, and I love meeting people like yourselves that are passionate about it and wanting to fly the shed flag.
Thank you.
Dan chips in there, beautifully put, Mike.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
rightly so. And one for you, Kate. Dan also chips in, says, excellent content. Kate, sign him up. Hashtag ambassador somebody. I can't read what it says there.
Well, now's a good time to talk if you fancy it, Mike.
Okay.
That would be great.
Where to begin? Plastering. Plastering. All right.
We really don't. My boyfriend's an electrician. I know what that's like. As soon as you mention a trade, that's all people want to talk about. My light bulb's like this.
Yeah. Well, I've just bought a house, and my son, who is also an amazing plasterer. I'm a very good plasterer, but because I'm older in years, I just do the small bits and the organizing and blah, blah, blah like that, talking to clients and whatever. But watching him is like watching me. He nearly falls over himself continuously, doesn't tidy up.
Well, it's not you then, Michael, is it? It's not you.
It's not me.
Because you are a studious tidier-upper.
Well, I take that role. I look at life as I'm cleaning all the time. You know about Ho'oponopono? Ho'oponopono? The Hawaiian art of forgiveness. It's called Ho'oponopono, where, in a nutshell, we clean up all the time. We have to clean up all the time, all the time, all the time. You can't just stop. You can have a rest, but not. Life goes on. Yeah, like you plan something and it rains, and you need it to be dry. So plastering. I could go off on 10 different tangents, but I'll tell you why I learned to be a plasterer. Why? Because I saw the money that the 2 guys who taught me were counting out on a windowsill on a Friday. They gave me this and they had that. So I thought, I'm going to learn this. And I'd go home every day looking like a statue. I'd be covered from head to foot in a crust. I'd fall asleep with my head in my soup, and that would be the end of it. And I'd get drunk at the weekends and then do it all again, over and over again. But I had the amazing opportunity to meet an old boy who actually died younger than I am now, which is, I've just thought about that. But he saw the interest I had in it, so he gave me every opportunity. And I worked with him at the weekends. And I needed to take care of him. I needed to serve him. So I had an opportunity to pick up the tools. So I learned a lot more quickly than the majority of young apprentices because of this guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was a plasterer, but he was also a genius in many other ways. And I think that's another tangent. I think we're all geniuses at being ourselves, but it's somehow squashed, and it needs people like us to help bring it out in others.
Yeah.
So this old guy, he used to ask me to help him at the weekends, and he'd pay me more for the weekend than he and his mate paid me a week, right? And I realized in the end, when I got to know about relationships a little, which I know a little bit more about relationships than I did then, but he wanted to get away from his wife. That's why he worked every weekend. But he had a son that he adored, and they made a night scope together. This guy was a plasterer, and he talked like he had a stutter. He smoked cigarettes before they had spats. So there was this brown, soggy thing hanging out his mouth all day. His breath stank, and he was fragile. And he was so slow, they called him Frisky, right? He'd been shot in the war and had a rake of machine gun bullets that pierced both lungs. So he's a bit fragile, but an amazing, amazing plasterer because he was passionate about it. And I think that's what helped me to become a plasterer, was the passion that he put into it. The other guy that taught me was also a very good plasterer, but he didn't care and he drank too much. And he was an old stick, and he's still around. Frisky's died, but Steve is in his 90s, and I go and visit him every now and again. We chew the cud. He's obsessed with this virus right now, so I can't go and see him anyway. So I learned to be a plasterer very quickly. From the age of 22, I became self-employed because I'm basically, and have always been, unemployable. I can't be employed. If you subcontract me, I'll be there 110%, no problem. I've made a few mistakes over the years, tried to rip a few people over the years because of being stupid, arrogant, but I paid for those penalties. I've paid for those. Now I clean up as I go. So what you read on the can, you get with me and basically the tribe I live with, my family. I have 5 brothers, 1 sister, and 2 of my brothers are helping renovate the house that we've just bought because it will be an extended family home. We work till about midnight, and my son is doing the plastering, and I'm doing the preparation ahead. Why did I learn to be a plasterer?
Can I interrupt you a second, Mike? Can I just interrupt you a second?
Of course you can, yeah.
Thank you.
Just this one, so.
I'm aware that I'm just aware that we are out of time. Kate is on the clock, so we're going to have to say goodbye to Kate.
I want to stay.
Well, look, if you want to phone for your other appointment and blow them off, that's fine. You're more than welcome to stay.
The problem is I'm the host.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really work.
Send them a link and they can just come and watch it.
Great. Thank you.
Right.
Mike, can we please connect following this?
Will.
Yeah.
I'll
Can you
send
link us up, Marcel?
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Got each other's email addresses, I think, already.
Oh yeah, we've got each other's email address, haven't we? Yeah.
Super.
One other thing, your boyfriend, is that the guy with the Hoover?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he needs to come here to give a few lessons to some of our shedders, okay? Right.
The piles of sawdust is all part of the characteristics of a shed, no?
Patina, yeah. Dan just chipped in. Bish bosh, loads of money. Ceilings are hard work, though. Yes, indeed. And Mark's just chipped in.
Not as hard as
Thanks
floor.
for joining, Kate.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. Yeah. So do you kick me out then? Is that how it works, Marcel?
I shall. Kate,
Nice
thank you so much. I can't say that enough. And I'm sure we will see you again soon.
I hope so. Yeah. Thank you.
See you on the other side.
Take care. Cheerio.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful. There she goes. Now, it's good to have you in, Mike. What I'd like to do before we get into conversation further is I'd like for us to stop for a tea and a wee. Because I know, I'm running low.
I'll fill mine up as well.
And you've got a phone call coming in. So we'll see everybody in 5 minutes. Go and have a wee. Go and put the kettle on. See you in a few minutes.
Arrivederci.
Oh, and we're back on.
Oh.
I hate the way that terminates violently every time. I will get to sort that out
Yeah.
at some point when I get time, you know. So, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Just to say, it's along with Queen Elizabeth II. I'm on rich tea today. What are you on, Michael?
Chocolates from number 19. I'm advertising number 19 cafe.
Oh, okay, yeah, lovely.
Upside down, yeah.
I'm on Swilk now, just the hot water and milk, because I'm feeling a bit caffeinated, you know?
Yeah. I'm on green tea, jasmine green.
Ah, nice. Well, that sounds good. Now, away in the background here, Michael, I've got some photographs. And I don't think I need to share any audio, so let's just go for that. Da, 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 da. And here we go. So now, I might need to fiddle with the width of what have you, but we'll leave it at that for the minute. I think it'll do. Now, Michael, this is a good starting point because this was just over 3 years ago.
Wow.
A very cold January, and you were there. That's you on the left there.
Wow.
I can solo that. Da, 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 da. Yeah, that's you there. And I thought I'll stick that in as a starting point because you've been with us from the very beginning.
Wow.
I know. It's crazy, isn't it? And as we step through from the crazy beginning, a good number of our, a good amount of our time was weekly meetings here with Bella, who was a massive part of our initiation as a shed. She was with us at the Thrive conference, the Thrive 2020 conference, which is a bit like a TED Talk kind of thing, TEDx. She was there. She was one of the people who heard Patrick Abrams from the Froome Shed talking about this thing called men's sheds. And she caught the vision straight away, along with a couple of other key guys like Mark Smith, who is now our chairman. So how did you hear about this, Michael? Where did you come in? Were you at the Thrive conference or did you pick up afterwards?
I may have been at the Thrive conference, but I never even thought about men's sheds. I don't know if I saw the speaker. I found out about men's sheds while I was waiting for a flight to come back from Exeter to Guernsey. Yeah, there was a renovation job in a cathedral or a chapel or something where they had a fair, and there was a men's shed stall. So I thought, wow, great. And they gave me a cup of tea and told me about men's sheds, and that was my introduction. And then I heard about the Guernsey one, about to start up or whatever, and I didn't realize I was right at the beginning. Excuse me, I'm just going to turn my phone off.
Sure thing. That's quite serendipitous then. Perfect timing. Yeah.
So
that's really cool. So yes, as I say, Bella was at that conference, and then this photograph was taken in what's known as the Digital Greenhouse in Guernsey, which is down in town, and it's kind of like a business incubator hub, startup-y kind of hot desking environment where people can set up businesses and operate little businesses, maybe 1 or 2 man businesses from this place, and it's sort of a melting pot of entrepreneurs. And they allowed us to meet there once a week, and we were many months meeting there weekly, doing things like we were talking about with Kate, setting up policies and health and safety and so on and so forth, which was quite something. Someone on Facebook's just chipped this in. Mike is my hero.
Who's that?
I don't know, but I'm guessing it might still be one of your daughters who's playing the privacy card by not allowing us to see her name and profile picture. But, you know, what can I say? But you are all of our heroes, Mike. So this is Mike at work. I mentioned earlier when I was talking to Kate the renovation of our shed and the portaloo that we had, and there it is, the green tent, the camp toilet. Oh, I've lost Mike. The camp toilet, which effectively just had a bucket in it, a glorified bucket with a toilet seat on. There you are. We've got you back.
Oh,
carry on regardless.
No mask on.
No, shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
But this was probably 18 months into our build, actually, something like that, because this is where we'd had to destroy the toilets, and let's run that again. Time lapse of us laying concrete floor, and that's our JP when he was that bit younger, and then this iconic photograph of you.
Like a big leprechaun.
After you've been plastering the column in the wheelchair accessible toilet.
Oh yeah.
I do love that. Classic. So you said a bit about how you got into plastering. How long ago was that? When you were in your 20s, you said something?
No, I became self-employed and left my apprenticeship at about 22. I started when I was 16, between 15 and 16. My father used to wake me up every morning. Well, my mother used to wake me up every morning, 7 o'clock, give me some breakfast, a bottle of tea, and some sandwiches, and say, "Go and find a job." That was it. Right. Bicycle. And I tried quite a few jobs. Because of my attitude, I either was abusive to them or they were abusive to me. But in those days, people employed youngsters and expected them to do the work of a man.
Yeah.
And I just left school, so I wasn't capable. Anyway, my father got me a job with a subcontract plastering crew, and I grew to love it. So when I was 16, by the time I was 22, I used to travel. From the age of 18, I'd travel. I'd go away for the winter to Spain, Morocco, places like that. When I come back, the guys would always give me my job. But I came back one year, and they said, "Oh, you go and start this house. You do all the base coats, all the scratch coats, and we'll be along to finish it." Well, they never came, and I finished the whole thing on my own. Right? But they sent me a guy to help, and I thought he was a plasterer. I said, "You go upstairs. I'm just finishing the downstairs." I went upstairs for a cup of tea after about an hour and a half, and he was there looking at a wall that was like Rockane Bay. And I said, what? He said, "Well, I'm not a plasterer. You didn't tell me that." He's only a labourer, right? So I had to fix that. Unluckily, the customer came in, saw it, and I had to pledge that I would make it as good as new. And I was very, very nervous, and the client was very nervous. But by the time the end of the job came, I cracked everything. He was very happy, and I made twice as much as the guys would pay me normally when I worked with them. And at the end of the job, I had a bonus. I had like a month's wages in one hit, because I underdrew every week as a price, and I underdrew every week. And so at the end, I had £40 at the end of the job as a bonus, and that was a month's wages in those days. So I thought, if I can do one, I can do them all. So off I went, and that was the beginning of my self-employment. And I tried to work for a firm for 2 weeks, and I realized I can't do this. The whole atmosphere. I felt like an animal in a cage. Whereas I'm doing exactly the same thing, but I'm self-employed and I don't have to have a bunch of restrictions. That was the way I looked at it. I still look at much of life that way now.
Sure.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Now, one of the things I've loved about seeing, I've loved about seeing in you, I've loved about you, there we go, that's probably the way to put it, is your willingness to teach. And this was probably a year ago. And I can't remember quite what the occasion was, but we had a shout from the Scout Association over here to say, we've got some youngsters that would like to do something with your shed. It's part of an initiative, a national thing. Could some shedders get together with a few scouts? And what I absolutely loved seeing was the way that you took this particular young man to do sort of plastering, cementing in around the taps that were all loose in the wall.
I remember, yeah.
And it was absolutely wonderful to see the way that you explained stuff to him in a way that he could understand, and the reasons behind what you were doing. Demonstrated it, and then let him play. And in fact, we'll come on to that. We'll skip through a few pictures. Here again, this is with Alan, who was on the show, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, something like that, with his boat. Now, this is you also, again, demonstrating, and if I skip forward a few more, to the context of this group. We've got a large wall in our shed in Guernsey that is going to have sort of a closed-in space, like an open-ended office, glazed sides, but it'll be the super clean room for computers and 3D printers and the like. So we wanted to take the bare concrete block wall and clean it up. And Michael's our man for plastering. But not only did he say, I'm willing to plaster it, but more importantly, you said, yes, I'm willing to workshop it. So over the space of a few weekends, you must have seen probably a dozen people, and you showed them how to do it. And, you know, like most people have always had I fancy having a go at that. What I loved seeing is that you'd show them, and then you'd step way back to the point that you and I were having a conversation over there about some other part of the building. And in the background, there's people dropping plaster on their toes, left, right, and centre. But it didn't bother you in the slightest. And I loved that, to see the way that you mentored people, but then also let people get on with it and find their own mistakes. Where's that come from in you?
Where does that come from? That was the old guy I was talking about, Frisky. He was very much that way. He would say things like, you can't go wrong because I'll sort it out. And that's my approach as well. You can't go wrong. It's impossible to go wrong. The only thing that we do wrong is what we think we're going to do it wrong. It's in our heads. So you just throw it at the wall, whatever way you want to do it. And you know, I can give you some basic guidelines, and then you find your own way. And that's how he taught me. The other guy was very much more stringent because he saw it as taking up time where he could be earning money. You know, I was there to help him make money, and he wasn't like that all the time. But that was his main focus. Whereas Frisky was nurturing me along rather than bustling me along, which the other guy was. Yeah,
sure.
I love teaching as well. To pass on knowledge, not just myself to others, but I love to see anyone passing on their knowledge, their wisdom in any form. You know, sweeping the road, making a cake, whatever. And I also love to watch other plasterers. I will never tire of that. Watching someone who's a master at it, like watching my son. He's an amazing plasterer. He's taken it to another degree. He still needs to learn to tidy up a bit, but that'll come.
So here you are, of course, teaching the mix, which is as important as slapping it on the wall, of course.
Absolutely.
I remember some of the guys there saying, this bit's a bit wet and it's just slumping, it's coming off. What do I do? What do I do? And the advice you gave there was, walk away. Just go and do that bit over there. And then in
That's
5 minutes, it'll have dried back a bit, and then you can just give it a one-off. That was, really valuable bits of information because of your expertise and your manner. I love that. So we had a pile of fun, as you can see, and I'll introduce Uncle Tom as well. This is Alan's Uncle Tom, who is in his 90s now, I think, and he often comes over in the summer to visit to Alan over here. And he comes over from Scotland up St Andrews way, and I remember you. Do you remember, Mike? You commented something about Tom when he picked up the what's that called? The board. What's that called? The hawk. When he picked it up, do you remember what you said about him?
I can't remember. No.
You said he knows what he's doing. He's done this before. You could just see it straight away. Even though at 90 odd he was struggling with the weight of it and the mobility of it. But I remember you just commenting, he's done this. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, there is a way you can tell if someone's new to it. Like a guy would walk on site, and I knew if he was going to be any good or not. Yeah, it's as simple as that, and it's just it comes from experience. It's
interesting, isn't it? So there's JP making a. Well, I'm going to say making a mess, but that's not entirely true. But this is a cracking bit of video of. He's over there and he doesn't know I'm showing this, but I
do know. Does he? That's it. Oh, what?
That's my boy. Look, he's going up in the world.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
I've got to say the joke. That's not his real ladder. That's his step ladder. And there's our Bella. I'd forgotten she was there.
Yeah.
But this was so wonderful. It was such a lovely team effort, just with whoever turned up on the day over the space of a few weeks.
Good boy. Yeah. Well, it's theatre as well. Make it into theatre and something enjoyable, which and the way I like to teach is that way. And it's the opposite to the way that I was taught. That's why I have an aversion towards still, because of my experience with school and schooling, which I left at the age of 14, I still have an aversion towards it, and I find it very difficult. I have to step over myself to get into that situation. But where I'm in charge, I can make up my own rules, and I can break the rules. Right. I remember one guy saying to me, he was always fighting with me. A guy I was teaching to plaster, a lovely friend of mine, and he was always trying to trip me up in some way, to be better than me. And I'm trying to teach him, So he would say, but you told us how to do that the other day in this way. And I said, yeah, but I'm allowed to break the rules. Till you know how the rules work, you have to abide by them, and then you can break them.
Yeah, I've seen a bit of that in you, in that you've sometimes come across as having a very laissez-faire attitude to the mix or the stuff that you put into half a bag of whatever's chuck it in, and that comes over as being very slapdash. But I now know, I've seen it in your work, that actually it's based on experience. That's fine. You can check that in. That's good. Through doing it once or twice before.
Well, that's because I've made all the mistakes, and I have thrown things in that did not work. Now I know. For instance, this wasn't something I chose to do. It was in the old days. The plaster was very different. It was called cerophyte. That's another story there, which I'll talk about after. Cerophyte, and it would, if it was a fresh batch of cerophyte that would arrive here, it would be so fiery you would not get it out the bucket onto the spot board, and it would be hard. Right,
Wow.
but there were ways to slow it down, which old Frisky taught me. And sometimes you would get a fiery old bag or a fiery new bag.
I was going to say I knew a girl like that once.
Yeah, sorry, that's your mind, nothing to do with me. We'll talk about that at the next men's shed meeting.
Yeah.
You would you'd put on the first coat of multi-finish now, which is the advanced certified, and you put one, you do it in two coats. You put the first coat on, you leave it a little while to set and pull, and then you put the second coat on. Well, if you've got a fiery old bag for the second coat, it would dry more quickly than the first coat, and it would look like, because underneath was still wet, and it would look like a cracked earth floor. The sun had baked it. Only on the surface though, and underneath it would still be like a jelly. So right. the only way to get over that was to let the whole thing dry, then PVA it and go over the whole thing again.
Right.
And that happened to me a couple of times in my career, but I learned from that. I learned just straighten it out, leave it, go away, go to the pub or go and cry in the corner, whatever you want to do, but do not try and fix it, because it isn't possible.
It'll just
so
get worse.
Wonderful lessons that now I can pass on.
Yeah.
And I do love to make it look like I'm going to make a mistake or do something back. I was going to say ask about Facebook. You can't say that on these sort of programs, can you? Make something look like I'm going to make a mess.
Yeah.
And know that it's not.
Yeah. Nifty.
Just for fun. It's theatre.
Chucked in this as well, just because it's not just the plastering you've been involved with. You've been involved in all sorts of stuff, including the making of pumpkin soup.
That was it. That's Natalia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we made a couple of massive cans of soup, and that was sold at least 2 years ago now, 2 and a bit.
Yeah.
At the Bean Jar Festival that we go for the non-locals. That's Bean Jar is a traditional Guernsey staple made of sort of like a bean soup, usually traditionally with a pig's trotter in it, or whatever you fancy for flavour. But yeah, the Bean Jar Festival, and we went up with a fairly fiery, gingery pumpkin soup, didn't we?
We did, yeah. Oh, look.
Yes. And what you don't know is that while I was talking to Kate, I got an email back from Liz, who managed to send me the photographs. So we've got a couple of photographs. This is Michael's current engagement. Tell us about it, Mike.
Right. Okay. This photograph was taken in 1982. I've only got that she sent me a copy of it as well. I now own that building. It's attached to the bigger thing next to it. And there's now in between, as well as a wall with some railings, there's a bamboo hedge, 10, 12 feet high. So it doesn't look like that at all. It's total mess. All the windows are rotten. Most of the woodwork's rotten. And the roof has been repaired and looks pretty much like that now. That was in 82.
Right.
Yeah. And we are now in the process of renovating it. Myself, my son, and 2 of my brothers have been helping. My son goes in the morning. He's usually gone by the time I get there. And then my brothers come at various times in the afternoon when I'm there. And we work with social distancing. It's quite amazing how we got into this routine, this ballet, this choreography of not getting near each other, Yeah. Excuse me if you get a bit too close or whatever. We sit in front of a big fire, so burning all the old wood, the rotten wood. There's a lot of dry rot in there, and we're burning the spore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and it's it's very different now. The garden is totally overgrown, or we've mowed it down a little bit, but it's very, very mature is the term used. Yeah.
Sure,
And then
yeah.
there's the arched door that takes you to an inner garden.
Okay.
And I've heard about this. This is the porch again. Yeah.
It's quite something.
And it's very, very beautiful, and it looks like the woodwork's pretty much rotten on the railings there, and the window to the right, somebody's replaced it with a plastic one, which is totally ugly. So we're going to rip that out and replace that. And the door is gone. The arched door there's just one of the posts left, and the rest of it's fallen away, and the woodworm have devoured it. A lot of woodworm have been in the house, and hopefully you're not still there. We've sprayed it and sprayed it and sprayed it.
Right.
So yeah, this is our project. I've just bought it for whatever, and I've got 25,000 to renovate it, which isn't going to be enough, but it'll be enough for me to move in a bedroom and a bathroom.
Sure.
And then we're going to just carry on. And then the weather gets better by the day, or ish.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move in, and so that I can spend a lot more time there. We're spending quite a lot of time there now. Anyway, as I said, my son had ripped everything out, all the walls, kangoed off. A lot of it was rotten, green, moldy. A lot of the walls were actually on the floor. The plaster had fallen off. Ceilings collapsed, floors collapsed. But where the leaks were really bad, it's washed behind the lime plaster and just left it on the floor. So
That sounds a bit like the shed, doesn't it?
yeah, the shed was tidy compared to the inside of that house,
Blimey.
which is amazing.
Yeah, that's quite a statement.
It's quite a statement. This is one of the worst houses. It's the messiest house that I've ever worked on. Actually, yeah.
So what were you thinking?
What? How do you mean? What was I thinking?
Taking it on if it's that bad? What's in it?
Because okay, I've been looking for a house for 3 years. I was going to buy a house collectively with various other people. That all fell apart. I went away to think about it and thought, okay, I'm going to buy a house on my own. I buy what I can afford on my own. Because I'd meet someone who'd say, yeah, okay, we'll do it together, blah, blah, blah. And then they think about it and say, sorry, Mike, can't take that risk, because they could not see beyond the mess, because everything we looked at was a fix-it house, yeah? And I wanted to buy a bigger farmhouse, and we could have a collective, live together collectively, so we could do these kind of lessons. It'd be like a family men's shed, family shed, if you like.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is, I saw it in the paper and thought, no, it's listed, it's protected building, and the people you have to deal with are lovely people. God bless their cotton socks, but policy, Mr. Lanuri. I've worked with them for years and years. I've renovated many houses, been part of restoration of many, many houses over the years, and worked with the heritage many times, and they can be, if you let them, a very frustrating crew to work with. I hope they're not listening now or taking offense. I love them to bits. I love you all to bits if you're listening, but
they might take offense because that fence hasn't got permission to be there.
That's very true. Well, that fence is like falling down, or I think I've thrown it on the fire. Anyway, I looked at it. I dismissed it. It was in the paper. Somebody rang me and said, but there's that, and I thought, oh yeah, okay, fine. And then next door, it's stuck on the side of a house, and they owned the whole thing initially. The people that built it. Next door is separate, and they called me. The people that own it called me and said, "Can you look at a job?" So, and I'd worked there about 30 years ago. Realized, and this place, it's got a big. It's called the Shrubberies, and it's got a hedge in front of it that has been growing, and stuff has died and molded away in front of it. So you could pass it and not even notice it. I never noticed it till I saw it advertised in the paper. I thought, where? Route Militaire, that I've never seen it. Anyway, I went next door, looked at the job, and they said, okay, fine, we'll call you when we're ready. And I thought, well, I'm here, I'll go and have a look. And I walked into the garden and I thought, wow, lovely garden. And I love the porch. And I walked through the arch to the inner garden, and I fell instantly in love with the place.
Mm.
And there's some outbuildings at the back which were like servants' quarters,
Okay.
a maid and a gardener lived in the back there, and is my understanding of it. I don't know if it's totally correct, but I fell in love with the place, and I thought, this is it. And I made an offer almost immediately, which was refused. A second offer, which was refused, and I made a third offer, and the guy who owned it accepted it. I think a little reluctantly, but nobody else. Because it was such a mess, you could not. I didn't even go inside it before I bought it.
Right.
The guy who owned it said it's unsafe. Nobody is to enter.
Wow.
Anyway, we did a bit of a sneak. Now I own it. I can tell the truth. My daughter, who said, "Hi, Dad," I give her a leg up into the window on the side and said, "Go and open the door if you can." So she went through, and it's all dark, dreary. The curtains are hanging down. The floors are rotten. The carpets are stinking. And she undid the lock, and I pushed the door, and the door fell in with the door frame and the wooden lintel attached to the door frame. The whole thing. So she held it together while I got in the window, and we jammed it all back up again. Right. But I was in love with the place, and I didn't care what mess it was. And actually, when I actually bought it and had a good look around it, it's in better condition than I imagined.
Mm.
How about that? And I got I got a bargain as far as I'm concerned. I could have bought a house like that in Portugal with 5 bedrooms and a swimming pool and still had change.
Yeah.
And moved into it with no work, no dry rot, woodwork. But that's not the case in Guernsey, right?
Yeah.
So this house is going to be restored to its original beauty, plus some modern technology, in lots of hot water, lots of insulation. We're going to go for a house that maybe we don't even have central heating in it. It's going to be so well insulated.
Brilliant.
But keep the beauty of it, and comply with heritage, and maybe not argue too much. Not anyway.
You mentioned previously a bit of the history behind this. When was it built, and can you tell us a little bit of what you know of the history of it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure when it was built as yet. I know these photographs are from 1982.
Mm-hmm.
I think on 1982 anyway, and the main house would have been built beforehand. And you can see the changes. It's not just one extension. It's 2 or 3 bits and pieces added on. So when you go into the attic space, you can see the line of the old roof.
Yeah.
The joists are still hanging in the wall, and there's a blocked-in window on the gable, which had a magnificent view up to the north of the island. It's facing north there, and we're hoping to make a little room up there for a kid's room, you know.
Super.
But one story that Liz, who lived there, told me about was when her mother lived there during the war, and that the Germans would march the slaves up and down to go and make the anti-tank wall, I think, at Lancresse, and on the way back they would offer them a glass of water from the well, which we are unearthing. My brothers are mechanic engineer type people, you know, as well as being wonderful. They are the most wonderful people. I'm very happy to be part of this tribe. They have an immense knowledge about all of these things, and they've got an amazing attitude of let's just do it. And they're very great. They're very happy that it's not just my house; it's our house, you know. And they approach it with the same enthusiasm and passion. And they're unearthing there were 2 well pumps things at the back, and all sort of broken under brambles and everything. And one led to the back of the main house where there's now a wall. So we thought, okay. So John started unearthing the other one. There's a well, a separate well under a mound of stones and things of lintel. But he came to me the other night and said, "Oh, Mike, the well is being guarded. The treasure is being guarded because we think that there's treasure in the bottom of the well. We, at the end of the rainbow, the gold is there, and that's why we really bought it. Anyway, there's bees either living there or looking for a home there.
Yeah.
So we left them alone for a couple of days, and
It's swarmy time coming up now.
oh, is that what it is? Yeah. Well, they're
swarmy time, so it might be on the hunt.
I think so. Well, maybe we should disturb it before they ensconce themselves. Yeah. But that's as much as I know really about the history of it. Until I sit with Liz, and her mother's still alive, so maybe we can get some more stories, more photographs, and talk to. I've forgotten the name of the guy that Liz's brother that owned it. I really look forward to that. I really would study the history. I saw a photograph in the main house when I went to look at this job. I met this young Scottish couple that live there. Lovely, lovely people. She's my optician, takes care of my eyes, and that's how I met her, and that's how she got to know that I was a plasterer. And what was I going to say there? I've forgotten what I was going to say there now, but doesn't matter.
The history.
They had a set of plans from one of the changes on the wall in a frame. So I'm looking forward to getting a copy of that.
Cool.
So that's all I know, but it's going to be an adventure. It's an adventure. It's not just renovating a house. You know, in my understanding, in my view, my experience, most building sites, the majority of building sites are very ugly places. There's a lot of ego management. The same in any job really, where you get more than one human together. A lot of arguing and bitching and backstabbing about, especially about cleaning up. Actually, I'm not a labourer. I'm just the electrician, or I'm just the plasterer. I don't clean up.
Yeah,
that sort of thing. So building sites are often ugly. This is so amazing. I mean, right now it looks like somebody's tossed a hand grenade in it. It is that much of a mess. Yeah. And I've just finished repairing, or I'm going back after this. I went there this morning. I was there till midnight last night. I went there this morning at 9 o'clock till whatever time, 12:30, 1:45, because I want to complete this floor, which somebody almost fell through. I took some people there, and the carpets were there, and it looks stable. So you walk across the carpet, and the next thing, this young 9-year-old girl half disappears. I told her multiple times, take care.
Oops.
She did take care after that, but she did half disappear. And now you can dance on it. And excellent. The wood that I've used is from another renovation job. I've called him Paul the Pit Prop. A guy's been renovating a house for 10 years, just up the road from where I live in St. Peter's, and he sold me all this scaffold and wood and stuff. And now it was a lean-to in St. Peter's. Now it's a floor in the shrubberies, which, by the way, yeah, isn't that amazing? Beautiful old pine. When you cut it, you still get the resinous, that beautiful pine resin smell. It's amazing. And I just mentioned the shrubberies, which is what it's called. We're going to keep it as the shrubberies, but we're also going to add something to it in old patois.
Aha.
Yes?
Yes, we spoke about that, yeah.
We spoke about that, yeah.
My mum on the case.
Your mum on the case. A safe haven, or the safe haven, whatever looks and sounds pretty, and that's what it's going to be called, which is what it already is. And one of the reasons I fell in love with the place, I know, is because the memories are there, imprinted in the land itself. And Liz, when she came, she was really quite nervous, saying, "I'm very sorry, but do you mind if I blah, blah, blah?" And we're saying, "Welcome," from a distance. Me and my brother, we'd offer you a cup of tea, blah, blah, blah. And she told us this, that, and the other, and went away saying, "I'm very, very pleased that you guys have bought the place and you're going to bring it back to its former glory, because I have such wonderful memories of it." And you can still feel that there. And that's the whole point of it. Like the shed.
Mm.
The shed, the whole point is to nurture our mental health so that we are healthy rather than leading towards anxiety, depression, which is prevalent, especially amongst men at present, in the way that we. That's another story, of course. But
as we touched on with Kate earlier, it's part of the way society brings up men that you tend not to talk about stuff. It's a sign of weakness. That's still the case, and we've got to try and just work around that, work through that, but actually talking to each other, making yourself vulnerable sometimes shouldn't be a sign of weakness, but also for the receivers of that sharing, that we must respect it and not exploit it. That's a two-way contract, isn't it?
absolutely. So when you feel safe, so a safe haven, when we feel safe, let's say as men right now, but as people, as men, as children, when we feel safe, we allow ourselves to go into those spaces that occur naturally. And vulnerability is not a weakness whatsoever. Vulnerability is a step towards creativity, towards health and healing. And we somehow stop that. So the shed is a step. This house is a step towards that. And many people will visit this place from around the planet. I know that. I have friends all over the place, and when they get to know about this, and they will, the word is already out there in the ether. We'll have lots of visitors, and then we take that back with us, and it opens us to that vulnerability that maybe we've stepped on or squashed in a very easy way, a simple way, like teaching. I mean, plastering is just a vehicle. It's nothing to do. It's something to do with the plastering and the wall, of course, but it's what you do and how we do it. Yeah. So we can do a job beautifully, but if we do it, we can make a beautiful picture. This is another tangent, but I look at much of the art I see these days is ego art. Yeah, it's to prove that I am. And I know that it's not a book I read. It's an experience I went through. To become a plasterer, I realized that you get recognition. Being, I was known as the plastering guru and all sorts of which I had the Mickey, some TV guy came and talked to me. Oh, the plastering guru. I had the Mick pulled out of me for years by the other plastering fraternity, in a good way, but I realized I became a good plasterer for the prestige. It wasn't, the passion was there, I know that, but part of it was the prestige, and that's gone now. Every now and again it pops up, and I want to be the special kingpin, but luckily that is diminishing. And but our society teaches us we need to be I don't know, above. And we compete rather than collaborate. You used the word collaboration before. Collaboration rather than competition. Competition is one of the major causes of anxiety and depression. Sure. What do kids put? Kids put it on Facebook. They want 20 out of 10 likes for the way they look in the morning. If not, they might take an overdose or whatever. We are so sucked into all that absolute nonsense. Yeah. So I use plastering. I use my skills, my building skills, as a way to open up a vulnerability in myself as well as others. Because, as you said, it's a two-way thing. Yeah. It can, if it's one way, then it's ego. Yeah. It can't nourish. It can maybe look good on the surface, but it's shallow. Yeah. So I have spoken.
Dan just chips in. Mike has got it, and he shares it too nicely. Yeah, very true. Very true. Thank you, Dan.
Oh, Dan.
Yeah,
Dan.
yeah, very true. Now, people may have noticed that I've got Guernsey flag bunting up this week, and that's not just for comic effect. There is a very specific reason why that is up, and that is because in about 10 days' time, on the 9th of May, Guernsey will be, I think I can use the word celebrate, but also commemorate, commemorating the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Guernsey and the other islands of the bailiwick of Guernsey, Herm, Sark, Alderney. And it's a very poignant and special time. It happens to be an important day in my life for my own celebrations. And it's wonderful because everyone gets a day off in my honour, which is nice. But it's a national holiday here in Guernsey. So that's Saturday the 9th. And many houses, particularly because of the COVID problem, many houses around the island are now putting up Guernsey and British flags. As it happens, the Guernsey flag didn't exist at the end of the Second World War. But many houses are putting up bunting and flags and signs, along with all the rainbow pictures that people have done as part of the COVID thing. So, as part of the SHEDcast, I thought I would share that with everybody, and also just sort of pre-announce that I'm dearly hoping that next week's show, next Wednesday, will be a bit of a liberation special. I mentioned when I was talking to Kate that one of the things the Guernsey Men's Shed has been doing over the last couple of years has been running an outreach project at a supported living complex. We've got one of our shedders there, a guy by the name of Richard, who was deported from Guernsey as a young boy and spent a good few years, I think it was, at a town in Germany called Biberach, where there were quite a lot of Guernsey people interred, I think is perhaps the word. And I'm hoping that we can technically get him hooked up. I'm saying it here, but I've not nailed it all down. So forgive me if that doesn't happen for next week. Something wonderful will still happen. But I'm hoping that we'll be able to share in some of his stories, which, as we've been shedding over the last two years, that he has shared along the way, and other people that live there have joined us and shared their stories. But I'd really love to share it through this forum because it's a very important part. Guernsey, the bailiwick, and Jersey as well were occupied by the Nazi forces for 5 years, and Michael's parents were they here, Michael, or were they evacuated?
No, they weren't here.
Okay. So a lot of people left the island. There's lots of stories of children, young children, who were evacuated at the outbreak of war, went to the UK. They were displaced and then homed up and down the UK, particularly northern towns. I know a guy who was homed in Bolton, or as he told me, Bolton. But they left the island speaking Guernsey French because that was the lingua franca at the time. But when they came back 5 years later, as a young child, 5 years is a very long time. They came back speaking English, not being able to speak patois, the Guernsey French, therefore not being able to speak to their parents, perhaps, and grandparents who were still on the island. Quite unimaginably difficult, and it tore families apart. That aside from all the people who lost their lives through one way or another. So it's still something that's very fresh in people's memories. There's a lot of evidence of the German occupation here. Mr. Hitler decided that the Channel Islands were a likely place for the Allies to invade France, the mainland Europe. So he set about fortifying the islands extremely heavily, and we still have very much of that. In fact, as Michael was saying, at his house, the shrubberies, the prisoners would often stop off on the lawn of the garden for a drink of water while they were being marched by the Nazi forces up to the Bay of Lancres, where the coastal wall, was anti-tank wall, was being built in concrete. So it's very tangible. I'm really happy to be able to pick up on what Michael was telling us about his property and project. So hopefully we'll have more to share about that next week. And if you've got any thing as a viewer you'd like to chip in, then please reach out to us. Get in touch with us through the Facebook comments or through YouTube comments, whichever platform you're watching on. We'd love to hear from you. Mark Smith chipped in, said, "The wisdom of Michael." Love you, fella.
Thank you.
And Dan has chipped in as well, saying, "Mike will approve of this quote." It's a quote from Stephen Jay Gould, The Panda's Thumb, More Reflections in Natural History. And the quote is, "I am, somehow, less interested in the weight and convolutions of Einstein's brain than in the near certainty that people of equal talent have lived and died in cotton fields and sweatshops." And that relates very directly to the occupation of the Channel Islands, the people that were lost here and the people who were brought here as slave labor. I can't say I've got a personal connection to the slave labor part directly, but my father, his dad, lived in Le Havre in France, and when the Nazis took over Le Havre, they went through the population and sifted through them, so to speak, and he had to declare that he was a carpenter decorator, and they said, "You'll come and work for us," to which he could have said no, and that would have probably been the last thing he said. But they brought him to Guernsey, and he worked here under the Germans, and he was head of a gang of decorators. And when they said, "You'll go and paint this building," he took the gang and he had to go and paint the building. And in that time, he met my grandmother, and so the story goes. So it's close to us, and even though it's 75 years, it's still relevant to us. And in the world we live in today, without getting all too maudlin, there's still a lot of lessons to be learned about the way people conducted themselves then and the risks we're at for conducting ourselves now, and what could follow. I'm sure Michael would agree.
Yes.
Well, Michael, it's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you for sharing everything that you've shared. It's a joy, as always, to spend time with you. And I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to share this. I'd say diamond. You're a diamond, Michael. You're very precious to us as a shed. And we've got a lot of diamond guys, every single one. As we were saying to Kate the other week on the Men's Shed Facebook page, it was posted a couple of days ago, "What's your most valuable asset in your shed?" And everybody's just chipped in by saying, "Yep, that's the members, that's the men, doesn't matter about anything else, it's the men." And every one of the guys that come along to the shed, whether it's once a blue moon or every single week and half afternoons in between, it's a real pleasure to have their company. They are real treasures, every single one. However, I'm very sad to say that we lost a couple of shedders recently. In a way, thankfully, not to do with COVID-19, but we've lost a guy, Paul, who's been with us for about a year, who drops in on a Saturday lunchtime with his wife and carers, and he would come and enjoy bacon butties with us and share a joke with us. And we also recently lost Brian, who was a very dear friend of mine. And it's been a very emotional time for me because I spent a lot of time with Brian. In fact, if I just skiffle back through these pictures, we've got a picture of Brian here. I'm just going to chuck this up because the guy in the middle there in the black tracksuit trousers and what have you, that's Brian, a dear friend. And we lost him just recently through a valiant battle with a very aggressive cancer. And it's been a real knockback, but also a real encouragement. It propels me forward to build good relationships and cherish the time that we get with each other. Because none of us know if we've got another 50 years or another day. We don't know. So I encourage you, as I've been encouraging everybody, to get creative every week and learn new things. Mike's been talking about learning stuff and that passion for learning things and making connections to people. I encourage you, yes, learn new stuff, but I also encourage every single one of us to make the best of the relationships and the people that we have around us. If you've got differences with people, that's normal. Kick the differences if you can. See past them. See the treasure in each other. Because we don't know how long we've got. And each of us can be a treasure to someone else. So I encourage you to do that. Even in lockdown, whether that's a phone call or an email or a chat over the garden fence. Make the most of it, fellas. Mike, would you add anything to that?
Especially in lockdown, I would say. It's an opportunity for us to see that we're here for each other, for ourselves and for each other.
Yeah.
It's an amazing opportunity. There's always a silver lining in everything. We can't go wrong. All we can do is take one step at a time. I miss those boys as well. Those old buggers that,
Yeah.
And I joked with Brian because he was always wheezing around, and I'd say, "Let me carry that old boy. I don't want you kicking the bucket before you plumb the toilets in." But he did it, didn't he? He managed to do it. We can go to the loo now, thanks to Brian.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And here was me in lockdown trying to get in touch with Brian to say I'd love to have you on the show. But he was hard to get hold of, and I wasn't quite sure why. I know they're not particularly technically connected, but I now know why he was hard to get hold of, because he was really ill and they were really struggling. So look after each other, folks. Dan chips in saying, "Nice one, chaps." And Kate, "A bientôt." Thank you, indeed. And he's right, saying it's all about #now, folks. It is now. And Jeff, nice to have you with us again, Jeff. Keep positive, guys. Foxy in the house. Foxy being my my pilot, my jump buddy that we saw last week. Alrighty, I don't think there's much to add, apart from hopefully we'll get some good liberation type content in for next week. Some good sheddy stories. And Michael, it's been a pleasure. Kate's had to run off to another meeting, but our regards and best wishes go to Kate, as they do to all of you. Thank you one and all for joining us. Left to sign off with the Guernsey phrase, "à la prochaine," which is derived from the French "à la prochaine," but "à la prochaine" means until next time. Alrighty. Thank you very much, one and all. We'll see you 3 o'clock next Wednesday. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Marcel.
See you soon. Chili.
Kitty.